Hi everyone, my name is Liyas Thomas. I co-created Hoppscotch open source project. Hoppscotch is an open source API development ecosystem. And in the next 20 minutes, I will be unveiling the inspiration behind starting the project, along with our journey so far, some of the obstacles that we faced, and how we managed to solve and scale Hoppscotch to over 170,000 plus users from around the globe. So also, the most important thing, I will be giving out 5 super simple ways on how you can monetize your own open source projects. And at the end, I will be discussing the future of open source developer tools. So without further ado, let's get started. So this happened in 2019, August 21. I was a fresher, just joined in a very early stage startup just after my engineering graduation. And one of the first tasks that I was assigned is API integration of a project. There were like 100 plus API endpoints for me to test and bind it to the UI. So that was the exact day that I realized there is this category of tools called API testing tools. And guess what? I actually went on a hunt to find a simple solution that would allow me to test my APIs without making much effort. I even tried downloading one popular app, but it ended up crashing my 10-year-old PC. And realizing all such tools are causing a lot of CPU consumption, I was very frustrated because at the end of the day, if I don't get my job done, I'm gonna get fired from my first ever tech job. So at that night itself, I decided to create a tool which operates in my web browser so that I can test my APIs directly from the browser window itself without switching back and forth between multiple apps. And within like 2 to 3 hours, I created a very minimal MVP, which looked something like this. So you can see exactly how unpolished or incomplete the first MVP of Hoppscotch looks like. This is the first ever initial commit that I made on GitHub for the Hoppscotch project. It is pretty simple. You just have to enter the API endpoint, choose a method, and just click send. And you will get the response beneath it. So if there is anything, or if there was only one thing I want you to remember from this session, it should be this. Never be ashamed of your initial version. And if your first launch doesn't look somewhat like this, the chances are it's probably too late to launch. So ship your product, ship your idea as soon as possible. So moving on, after making the initial commit, I felt very proud of myself. I was very satisfied with what I have done. I really wanted to share the news with the community. I made this single web page application and hosted on GitHub Pages. Thanks for GitHub, because GitHub Pages is the most simplest way to host a static website. And Hoppscotch being a 100% static site, it just took me like a couple of minutes to do that. After launching the MVP in GitHub Pages, I also wrote a blog on my dev.to profile, and I went back to sleep. The next day, when I woke up, I actually woke up to this 100 plus notifications on my smartphone. Most of them were from GitHub. There were a lot of issues. There were a lot of feature requests, a lot of comments on the project. I started to realize that within like 6 to 8 hours, in an overnight, I had 100 plus active users using the first ever version of Hoppscotch. Over the week, I tried adding a lot of more features and fixing a lot of bugs. Right now, Hoppscotch is a community of 180,000 plus users, and the UI and the app has improved a lot more. And this is the current Hoppscotch version with a lot of features from the initial version. You can test your APIs within 2 to 5 seconds, and response can be like found here. Apart from testing RESTful APIs, you can even test GraphQL, real-time APIs such as WebSocket, SSC, You can even generate API documentation, and the whole Hoppscotch testing ecosystem consists of a CLI client, two web browser extensions, a proxy middleware servers, and lot of other projects as well. So this is the initial journey of Hoppscotch, and right now we are at a good position where the repository has more than 29,000 plus GitHub stars with over 120 plus contributors from around the world. So this is the post which kind of went viral and had almost over 132,000 plus page views on dev.to. This is the single most traffic which I got for Hoppscotch project. So what does this mean for an ordinary developer like me or like you? Is the all traction Hoppscotch can be reproduced for another project? Or how is it possible for a project from India to get this much traction worldwide? So these are some of my observations that I made from building Hoppscotch project, which might help you to build the next best open source project. So the first thing starts with the realization that progress takes time. It might happen overnight, but the mindset should be progress should take at least a limited period of time for the project to get to a mature state. It might be 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, or over a year. So the mindset is very important that progress is a gradual process. And the second thing I really keen to do is I always try to solve a single problem faced by myself. And this very reason is why I started the project Hoppscotch. I was facing an issue or a problem, which is there was no API testing tools works for web platform. And I made that solution. And at first I was the only user. But as soon as I started sharing it with more of my friends, I started to realize the app requires more essential features and a lot of refactoring that need to be done. So always start with one problem and solve that solution for one user and scale upwards. And the other thing, which is the most important of all, is being consistent with your project. Never let your dependencies go out of date. Always keep your repository up to date, accept contributions, reply to your issues or pull requests as soon as possible. So that is how and why you should keep your repositories consistent. And next thing is always keep your community engaged. For Hoppscotch, we have two very active communities. One is a Discord server and the other is a Telegram public group. We always discuss our upcoming features with the community members and get feedbacks on how to do it, or if we encounter a bug which is affecting a lot of users, we always ask for the community members on feedbacks. Also, you should try to promote your project very often. This can be done in a lot of ways, but from my personal experience, I believe documenting your project, whether through a blog or a GitHub README, everything works. I wrote a blog, and document your progress is the single most best way to promote your project. Share your obstacles, share how you solved them. There are developers who are eagerly waiting to see how you did that. And the next thing is, well, the project consists of me and one of my partner, Andrew Bastian, who lives in Canada. We are the core developers and we always ask others for help. I am a front-end person and my partner is like a back-end person. Everything related to backend is single-handedly done by him and with the help of the community. I and him always ask for feedbacks and help from the community, and we are always keen to do it. So this always helps us to keep the community engaged, and this results in the betterment of the project. So even though if you could scale a project to a lot of users, how can you make a project sustained? So Sustainability of an open source project which has a lot of parameters in which the finance or the monetization part plays a crucial role. In Hoppscotch, we find a lot of ways to monetize our project, and these are the most super simple ways on how everyone can find a way to monetize their own open source project. Building a recurring revenue for your open source project. So the first one, which is the most obvious one, accepting sponsorships and donations from your potential users. Every open source project has this philosophy of gratitude behind it. The users are agreed to show the gratitude in terms of financial support as well. And to do it, there are a lot of projects. GitHub sponsors, Open Collective are doing extraordinary things to do it. So I advise everyone to add a sponsorship button to your repositories and even organizations. The second most one is self-hosted instances. So after evaluating our traffic, we realized that over 48% of traffic were coming from developer communities in countries like China, Singapore, even from India. And one thing very peculiar about these communities are they prefer a self-hosted instance rather than a public domain. And obviously, there are a lot of reasons for this, like bandwidth issues and all, but you can actually find a monetization plan on self-hosting your own open source project. If it is self-hostable project, do provide guidelines on how to do it. And if someone is having trouble with self-hosting your project, help them and accept a fee for that. So that is about self-hosting your projects. And the next thing is being a creator of your project. You are the best one to educate how to run your project or how to make use of a project for others. For a project like Hoppscotch, there is literally zero friction to get started with. But as the use cases increase, or if the users requires a complex functionality or a feature, they approach us on how to do it. We either show them how to solve it or we solve them by ourselves. And for that, for educating your users on how to use your softwares, you can accept a charge. And the fourth most one is, again, one of the most conventional one. You can release a feature or a set of features which comes with a paid plan. This works very similar to software as a service models. Or if your expenses, server bills are more than enough, you should hope for this way on monetizing. Start accepting a monthly fee or a yearly fee for a set of features which you think should be exclusive for your users. And the fifth most one is the most recent and most popular one right now, because it is accepting investments from potential investors. If you or your team can convince a potential investor or an angel founder on realizing a revenue model or a business model in the near future, there are a lot of angel investors who are looking to fund open source project. So keep a pitch deck with your project and ask for investors on potential plans or collaborations. Moving on. So even though if you are able to sustain your project, how can you even make an open source developer tools? If you look at the current proprietary services, if you look at every of them, you can actually find that every proprietary service use at least one open source tool or library in its core technology. In fact, there are proprietary services which make use of 100% open source tools. So what does this mean for an ordinary developer like me or you? How can you leverage the open source community to build or make another developer tools? So being a developer, this open source community is the best part that happened to me to build Hoppscotch project. So start with identifying a single problem faced by a single user. Then try to solve by introducing a solution. And this doesn't have to be like rocket science. A simple workflow in your workplace or a simple tool which you think that might have been better in another flow. If you find anything which lacks, is find a solution and make an MVP. Even though you build a solution for a single user, always look for an enterprise level use cases. So basically enterprises are communities of single users. If one user has an issue, the chances are there are a lot of users which face the same issues. Share your solution where developers or your potential users are hanging out. Subreddits, developer forums, extras are very good examples of where developers usually hang out. So after building an enterprise level solution, start to monetize your project as early as possible. Again, you can use any of monetization plans that I mentioned above. Start with a sponsorship or a donations and scale upwards. So scaling again comes with starting with one user, sharing with 10 of your friends, and scaling to your 100+ friends, documenting your progress and all. So this is how you can exactly build and make the next best open source developer tools with the help of community. And Hoppscotch being a tool built by the community and built for the community, we are really proud to accept all these contributions from our collaborators. You can follow me and my partner, Andrew Bastian, on GitHub and Twitter, or reach us by mail, and follow our project on GitHub/Hoppscotch. So thanks to GitHub and partners for this opportunity. This means a lot to us. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Liyas. That was a really interesting session to know about your journey in building Hoppscotch and everything else that you have come across. So all of you tuning in live, if you have any questions for Liyas, drop them over on discussions on githubsatellite.com/discussions, and we'll be taking up some of them live here for Liyas. We already have some questions coming in for you, Liyas. And I think the first thing that folks really want to know is, how do you find motivation to consistently work on an open source project?
Okay, so this is actually a tricky question because everybody has their own ways on finding motivation. And how I personally did is, I always find that motivation is a personal choice. If I want to do it, I will find a way to do it. And if I don't want, I will find excuses to avoid that. So I believe motivation is a choice that you have to make by yourself. And the way to do is like the example that I mentioned. If you're like documenting your progress or sharing the news with your friends or your communities, you will always have this push from them to deliver much more. And that is the single most reason why I keep building all those projects. And motivation is a choice that you have to make by yourself.
Great, that's perfect. So what's the most difficult thing about managing contributors from different time zones? Because they are located everywhere.
Yes. So as I mentioned, the project has over 120+ contributors from almost every country in the world. So how we did it, well, we kind of like leveraged that issues with opposite time zones to our advantage. And how we did it, at any given time, either one of the contributors will be online. And whenever someone raises a concern or an issue or a pull request, we will immediately respond to it. Because if I am sleeping, my friend will be online at any given time. And we actually leveraged that issue to our advantage, and that alone kept our community very engaging. Yeah.
Great. So one other kind of like a slightly different question that's come in is, how do you really see open source making an impact, making the world a better place?
Okay, so being an open source developer, well, apart from contributing to your open source projects, there are a lot of ways on how you can make a change in the world. And it doesn't have to be like writing code. It can be helping your friends in need. It can be being a part in the decision committee, or it can be like very single gestures like responding to your concerns raised by your users and all. So all those little small things that we do are exactly what makes the web a better place. Yeah.
Great. We've actually got a question come in from Ardash, who's watching your session live right now, which is great. So Ardash asks, what does it mean to self-host projects?
Okay. So there are a lot of ways on how you can self-host your project. And for a web project or a website, and if it's a static site, which Hoppscotch is, you can always stick to the free plans provided by GitHub or static hosting service like Netlify and all. And if you have a potential customer who would like to have a self-hosted version, you can have a discussion with them and charge a fixed amount for doing all those self-hosting process, which is again one of the best ways on how you can monetize your open source project if it is self-hostable.
Perfect.
Got it.
So I've got another question for you then. Sorry, go on.
Oh yes, go ahead, Anisha, please.
No, yeah, I was going to say, do you have any like 1 or 2 tips that you can share with our viewers on how they can quickly get started?
Okay, so being a developer myself, I always suggest other fellows to do 3 things. One is get to familiar with at least one programming language. It can be any of your choice, JavaScript, even HTML, CSS, any language which you are comfortable with. And use GitHub search box to find projects that need help. Always search for topics like good time issues and all for finding issues or potential collaborations for newbies, or anybody can use that. And have a communication with the collaborators or core members on how to get started with a particular project. Every open source project has this team of core maintainers who are very keen to help those who would like to contribute to their project. At Hoppscotch, we personally encourage everyone to make a contribution, because that is all, that is everything about the community. Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot, Liyas. We know there are some more questions which are coming in, but just as a reminder, Liyas will be around on GitHub discussions for the next 30 minutes. So you can catch him over on githubsatellite.com/discussions right over there for any other questions that you can have. So thanks a lot, Liyas, for joining us today. It was really interesting to learn about your journey, about Hoppscotch and everything else as well. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye then.